Today we're going to be replacing the wheel bearing on my 2002 Toyota Tundra. We're going to be doing the front right passenger side wheel bearing. I've already done the other side, so we just got to wrap up and do this side. We're going to start by taking off the wheel and getting to the rotor. If you don't have a 1/2-inch impact gun, you can do this job, but it's going to be much harder. I would recommend just having one or going and getting one for this job. So normally the next thing you do is to take off the brake caliper. But the last time I was working on this truck, the top nut and ball joint was giving me a lot of trouble. So I'm gonna start there to see if I can even get that loosened. I'm gonna go ahead and bend this cotter pin so I can slide it out. So now that I've bent it straight, I should be able just to get that out. Now, if you can't get it straight enough, what you can do is you can just clip the ends off of this and then get it out that way. And if you need to, you can use a punch and clear out any bits that get stuck in there. So I've gone ahead and loosened this nut up, but I didn't take it all the way off because if I am able to get this upper control arm to loosen, I don't want it to spring off yet. Again, I'm going in a slightly different order than you normally would, but because this upper control arm has decided to be fussier than a horse girl on prom night, I'm starting here. So now we're gonna wanna shock this upper arm until it separates and comes up. How, might you ask? With this guy. Make sure you wear safety glasses so you don't blind yourself if any metal chips off. Okay, so it's been like 45 minutes and I still can't get this to separate, but I have an idea. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the brake caliper off, hang that over here out of the way, and then I'll show you what my plan is. So I've put a 17mm socket on the bottom of the 2 mounting bolts, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and pop these off. The other one's located right here. To take the brakes off, you take these springs off and then slide the pins through here. Then after that, to loosen up, I like to take a small flathead screwdriver, place it down in here, and then just gently pry against the rotors. And then be careful doing that so you don't damage the surface of the rotor. Once it's loosened up, you can kind of use your flathead in these holes here and just kind of work it out until you can eventually just pull it out. I like to keep all my parts together and lay the pads down in the orientation that they came out. So I'm taking the last bolt out. So as I take the last bolt out, I'm going to support it. And then I have these hangers. You can use bungee cords, zip ties, whatever, but these are pretty cheap. Now this is not normally how you would hang it, but the reason I have it this way is I wanted it clear over here and put a 2x4 running up to this upper control arm and then lower the car, hopefully kind of pushing that off. So you can see I have the 2x4 up against the upper control arm up there. Then I've lowered the car. I'm gonna lower it a little bit more and then give some more taps. So after using the 2x4 to press up on the control arm, as well as hitting the area around the bolt with the torch, finally got it to release. So I had to do some more stuff off camera while it charged. So I took out the ABS sensor right there, just a 10mm screw. Took this bracket off, another 10mm screw. Now we're gonna take off the axle nut. I have a pry bar holding it in place. Take a 35mm on the end of my impact and just like. So now that we have the upper control arm separated, as well as the lower control arm, which are those 4 bolts underneath, I'm gonna slide this whole assembly off of the axle. Okay, now I have this whole assembly off the axle spline. I had to hit it with a soft face hammer a little bit. Okay, now that I have the steering knuckle off, I'm gonna start by taking this seal off, so then we'll be able to press out both the hub and then the bearings. So I'm using a screwdriver and a chisel, and I'm striking underneath where the seal meets this actual steering knuckle. And I'm just trying to prop it up so I can kind of go around and loosen it. I went around and loosened it, and now the seal came off. So now we'll be able to press the actual hub out of the steering knuckle assembly. All right, so I have my press set up here. I have an old rotor underneath, then the steel block supporting the steering knuckle. Now I'm gonna start pressing, and that hub is going to come out. So as we press, it's gonna press down through, but we still have space underneath. So now we can take out our ABS sensor ring and spacer. Now that we have the hub out, we're going to turn our attention to this bearing. So first we have to take the seal out. Then there's a snap ring down here that we're going to take out. Finally, we can actually press out the old bearing. So again, I just used a chisel underneath this lip to pop this seal up. Next, we have to take out the snap ring. When I did this job on the other side, the two tabs for the snap ring had actually snapped off. So I had to fish it out using a pick, which was really sketchy, but we made it happen. When doing this, you can obviously use a pair of snap ring pliers, although I find needle nose pliers do the job just fine for these. Now that we have the snap ring out, go ahead and hold on to this. Chances are the kit you got doesn't come with a new snap ring, so we'll have to reuse this one. Now we're ready to press out the bearing. So I have a seal pusher back here, making a flat surface, pressing against that bearing. And then again, we're just gonna start pressing it out. Bearing. There's some rust around this edge, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean that up with some 1000 grit sandpaper, as well as just some WD. Now that we have the steering knuckle cleaned up, it's ready for the new bearing. Now there's gonna be a side of the bearing that looks like this, and then when you flip it over, it's gonna have some writing on it, and it's gonna look slightly differently. You want the side with writing facing up. And when you press this bearing in, it's really important that you support it, especially around the outside, pressing it in so that you don't separate the bearing. So I have the knuckle set up on the blocks with a crowbar as a spacer, and then the top of the arm just resting over here. So I have it level, and we're just pressing in that bearing until it bottoms out. You can see that the bearing is now fully seated below where that snap ring goes. Okay, now that I've cleaned off the snap ring with the automotive holy water that is brake cleaner, we're gonna go ahead and put this back in. So you can see that I've kind of gotten the snap ring started, and then we're just gonna work it around and down into the groove. I need both hands for this. So again, just working it around, ensure that you don't lose any pieces of your glove, and then just pressing it in. I like to give them a little pulse with the pliers just to make sure that they're fully seated. Now that the snap ring's in, I'm gonna go ahead and put the seal on. I'm just using a piece of wood and then tapping it in. So I've got the new hub set up, ready to get pressed in. Now it's really important that when you're pressing in the new hub, that you support the inner race of the bearing. So what I've done is I've actually taken the old inner race from an old bearing and used that as a backing to support it. So I have that back here, and then another press just to take up the slack, and then the other bearing underneath to support it all. So now we've bottomed out. So I'll go ahead and release the tension, and we'll check how the hub is. Take this off. This off. Looks good so far. We'll flip it over and check. So again, this is the inner race of the bearing that I used to just support the backside of this bearing so it didn't press out. I've gone ahead and put the ABS sensor ring in as well as the spacer. Again, making sure to have the bevel side facing up. I have it sitting in an old rotor just so that it kind of holds it in place. And then I'm gonna go ahead and press it in. So I've gone ahead and put the final seal on. You wanna make sure you don't strike the outside lip. So I used a punch and kind of just went around the inside here to make sure that it's fully seated. As you can see, it's fully seated, so now we're ready to put this back on the truck. So I've got it part of the way back on. Sorry, I had to do some work while my phone charged. I'm going up to the mountains tomorrow, so I just got to get this done. But started to slide it on, did the top nut a little bit, just gonna help hold it in place. And then I went in and re-secured these 4 bolts on the bottom. I like to start with the back ones, kind of get those on a little bit, and then you can kind of manipulate this a little bit to line up the rest. Now we're gonna go ahead and tighten this up, get it secured, get everything torqued down, and start putting everything back together. So I'm gonna go ahead and put the ABS sensor back into that hole right there. And then when I'm doing that, I'm gonna make sure that it seats all the way. I know some people online have said that they've had issues with this not seating properly. I did have to give it a slight tap to make sure that it's seated properly, but now that is all the way in. This is supposed to be tightened to 173 foot-pounds. I don't have a torque wrench that goes that high, so we just ugga-dug at that. We're gonna torque the upper ball joint to 77 foot-pounds using a 22mm socket. Went ahead and torqued this down and put a new cotter pin in there. Next, we gotta just reassemble all of this hosing. I went ahead and put the rotor on, and I'm just using one of the lug nuts to hold it in place. Next, we're gonna take the brake caliper and actually mount it back on. Got the brake caliper on, slid the pads in, got it all tightened down. Now we just gotta do the hardware, so putting these bolts through and everything. There we go, everything's back together. All you have to do is put the center cap back on, put the wheel on, make sure you hit the brake disc with some brake cleaner because you've been touching it. But yeah, that's it. That's changing a front wheel bearing. Super easy, you know, nothing ever goes wrong. But if you guys have any further questions, go ahead and just leave them in the comments. This wasn't really meant to be like a step-by-step video, just kind of some of the things I've experienced with working on these and some of the tricks I've used to try and like overcome those. But yeah, if you guys have any other questions or want to see any other videos, go ahead and just let me know.